Hey, good evening. This is Derek. We're talking about Atomic Habits today. This is the book by James Clear. If you haven't gotten a copy of it yet, I highly recommend it. But let's remind ourselves why we're here. Most people love to set New Year's resolutions, and I'm one of them. Love to set goals and habits that I want to create this year. But I'm also really good at not keeping the habits. I'm really good at falling off the wagon. Most people by January 12th have given up on their habits. So in an effort to not give up this year by January 12th, I'm working through a chapter of Atomic Habits a Day by video. And if you're watching it and you're encouraged by it, that's fantastic. That's what this is for. So a couple days ago, we learned that we do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our habits. And then yesterday, we learned that our identity creates our habits, and our habits then feed back and create our identity. And there's a two-step process to creating an identity. One is decide the type of person that we want to be, and then take small actions to become that type of person. Today we're talking about actually the habits. How do we go about creating habits? It's an important thing to talk about. There's 4 steps that the author James Clear is going to break down about how to build a habit. But first of all, let's talk about why our brain craves habits, why it builds habits. You see, consciously, our brain can only focus on solving one problem at a time. And so automatically, our brain looks for ways to shortcut its attention span. It looks for ways to shortcut the amount of attention it has to spend on solving recurring problems over and over and over again. Habits simply are recurring solutions to recurring problems. And what that does, it allows our brain then to free up energy to focus on problems that don't occur all the time. And so actually, habits don't restrict our activity. Habits actually create space and freedom for us to solve important problems when they come up in life. Habits are mental shortcuts that are learned from experience. So everybody has different habits because we have different experiences. We experience different problems in different ways, and so our brain automatically creates different shortcuts to solve those problems. So the fantastic question is, how do you create a habit? James Clear breaks it down into 4 steps. There's a cue, there's a craving, there's a response, and there's a reward. The cue is simply something that we interact with in life. It's one of our 5 senses. We hear something, we feel something, we see something, we touch something. It's a cue, and it triggers a craving, which is step number 2. The craving is, we don't crave the habit itself. We crave the change of state that it delivers, right? And so then from the craving is different from person to person. You think about a gambler. The jingle of the slot machine to a gambler is a huge craving. That's what they crave. But to me, I'm not a gambler, so it doesn't force me to crave anything. But what I crave is the response. That's actually the habit that I'm taking. That's actually the action that's taking place, is the response. But why am I doing that? It's for the reward. The reward ultimately is the end goal of every habit. It is a problem that is being solved. So the first purpose of the reward is to satisfy my craving. Right? That's what it's there for. It's to satisfy my craving. It's the end purpose of the habit. But the reward also teaches us which actions are worth remembering in the future. They're the ones that work out well, and our brain automatically says, "Ooh, I like that reward. I'm going to go back to this cue and this craving and this response and this reward every time because I like that." Right? So ultimately, the reward is the last step of the habit, and it is ultimately the thing that we are gunning for. But here's the kicker: if a behavior is insufficient in any one of those 4 stages, the habit will not last. The action will not become a habit. So it's important that we understand exactly how do you create a good cue, a good craving, a good response, and a good reward. So let's talk about a couple great examples of these 4 stages of creating the habit. And I'm going to read a couple that he provided in the book since they're written out so well. But think about the cue of a phone buzzing in your pocket. That feeling triggers a craving. The craving is wanting to know what the message says. So without even thinking about it, we reach in our pocket, we pull it out, and that's the response. That's the action that we call the habit. And then the reward is that we know what the message says. So just like that, every time you do that, your brain has automatically walked through the 4 stages of habit making, and your brain has taught you that every time you feel the buzz in your pocket, you associate it with reading the text, and you go from the triggering the cue of vibrating in your pocket to reading the message without even realizing that you're doing it. Another example he talks about is walking down the street and smelling the donuts from the donut shop. That's the cue. The craving is you begin to want a donut. You can almost taste it in your mouth, right? And so the response is you walk into the store and you buy a donut, and the reward, you bite into it and it tastes just delicious. And so automatically your brain has taught you to shortcut this problem of the cue of smelling a donut all the way straight to buying the donut and tasting it. And it's an automatic habit that you've not even realized that your brain has already built into your life to shortcut that problem that you're trying to solve when it comes to smelling those donuts. So remember, we said a couple minutes ago, if a behavior is not, if a behavior is insufficient in any one of these 4 steps, the action will not become a habit. So he talks about four laws of behavior. So how to create a good habit? Well, first of all, for the cue, we need to make it obvious. That's law 1. For the craving, we need to make it attractive, so we want to do it. For the response, we need to make it easy, so it's an easy response. And then for the reward, we need to make it satisfying. And so if we can create habits that are obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, those 4 things, I'll read them again: obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. If we do those 4 things, then we can create good habits. How do you undo a bad habit? Exactly the opposite. You make it invisible. You make it unattractive, you make it difficult, and you make it unsatisfying. That's how you undo a bad habit. The rest of this book is going to be dedicated to those 4 laws. How to make a habit obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And once you figure out how to do that, you can create any kind of good habit you want to in your life. And as soon as you can figure out how to make bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, you can undo any bad habit in your life. So let's wrap this whole thing up. Habits are simple ways that your brain solves recurring problems. And if you want to know how to build a good habit, you have to make it attractive. You have to make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it rewarding. So with that, we'll talk tomorrow about how to make habits obvious and how to start building great habits for the year 2021.